A really exciting program today. We'll be hearing from people on both sides of the border and businesses about what is happening in our state and in Canada and how we are working together in order to further business development. Before we get going, we at the Cobb Chamber have a special relationship with our friends in Canada, particularly with our friends in Quebec. We have been engaged with the Canadian Consul General as well as with the Quebec City Government Office since 2019. And this has led to a specific partnership that we have with Quebec International, which is the economic development organization for the city of Quebec. We have visited Canada many times doing different scouting efforts out to Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and Quebec. And as part of that, we have developed various partnerships where we have learned about the different economies and the synergies between our economies with these different areas. We are now, as I mentioned, we are now in a strategic relationship with Quebec International. We are encouraging trade and investment on both sides of the border. This includes business-to-business meetings, as well as cultural and other type of relationships where we are really building upon both the education, cultural, and business aspects between the two areas. We are planning our first outbound trade mission. We'll be taking about a dozen companies up to Quebec between October 12th and 14th in order to lead a delegation up there so we can find partners in Quebec and help build those business-to-business relationships. Before we get going, and I want to remind everyone there is plenty of food and drink, so please help yourselves. We're happy to be hosting you here for this event, and are thrilled that we're going to be kicking off our series with Canada today. Before we get going, I would like to introduce our sponsor for our international series here at the Cobb Chamber. I would like to introduce Dina Kismatalina, who is Atlanta's managing attorney with the Middle East firm. She's going to be here to say a couple notes about the Middle East firm and the partnership we have together. So, Dina, please.
I was nervous about pronouncing my last name, but you did amazing. Thank you so much. And now I get to speak in the magic box, I think. So hello and welcome. My name is Dina Kismatalina. I'm a managing attorney for the Atlanta Internet office for the Manila firm. We specialize in family law and international family law in Georgia. We have 5 offices in Savannah, in downtown Atlanta, in Gwinnett, in Cobb County. We just opened a new office in Forsyth, and I think it always mentions Savannah. We are really fortunate because we have a wonderful team for multicultural, multinational team of professionals that we work with every day. And I think collectively we speak probably 85 languages between different people within the firm. And we have a wonderful network of legal professionals and people. We are trying to further our diplomatic connections as well because of how much international law we do. So specifically, we want to thank Global Atlanta and Cobb Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to be part of the initiative, and looking forward to get to know all of you. And looking forward very much to the presentation on Canada, and I prepared a fine story about Canada. So we work quite a lot with attorneys in Canada, and we recently had a case in Alberta, Canada, where we had a client in Georgia, and it turned out that that client had a hearing in Alberta in court, but literally it was 30 minutes. So we were able to log in and log into the hearing, and we requested for our time to essentially report to the judge. And we've noticed that all the counsel refer to each other, my friend, and we're like, well, maybe they didn't know each other, and they're all friends in Alberta. And it turned out that in Canada, or just in Alberta, they refer to opposing counsel as my friend. Everybody referred to the judge as my lord or my lady, so it was very down and heavy. But I'm happy to report the hearing went well, and it is true what they say about Canadians, they're extremely polite, very friendly. So thank you so much, and without further ado.
Out of the way. Y'all are going to hear a lot from me, so I'm not going to take up any time right now because I'm going to give you your orientation, and that's why we're here. But I'm Trevor Williams with Global Atlanta. My role right now, though, is to introduce Consul General James Hill, Consul General of Canada in Atlanta for how many months now? 3 months. And what's cool about Consul General Hill is that he was flying back from Costa Rica, and he just decided he wanted to stop and stay in Atlanta for an indefinite period of time. So he was appointed here after being ambassador to Costa Rica. And one thing that I found fascinating in our meeting at the Consulate General of Midtown was apparently we sell, Canada sells more to Georgia, and for Georgia's exports to Canada, I think are much larger than the entire trading relationship in Canada and Costa Rica. You mentioned that by like 10 times or something. So this shows you that's how intertwined we are. And this posting, I think, the Consul General said will be a bit different because there's a lot of business ties that he's been steadily orienting himself to. But he's not just the former ambassador to Costa Rica. He's been posted in Seattle, that exotic locale. He is from Saskatchewan and studied history at the University of Saskatchewan and really caught the international bug teaching English in Japan. I think that's accurate. Joining the Foreign Service in 1989, he had the first assignment in Tehran, Iran. Then he was sent to Rio de Janeiro, where he served as Consul and Trade Commissioner in that part of Brazil. He moved up the chain, aided by his Portuguese proficiency, and has served as High Commissioner, which is equivalent to Ambassador in Mozambique, Chargé d'Affaires in Kuwait and Libya, Deputy Head of Mission in Afghanistan, Head of the Cook's Diplomatic Observer Mission, among other posts. I like that, among other posts, just added at the end there after all of that. And now he brings that resume here to Atlanta. So, Consul General Hill, thank you so much for being here, and please give us your address.
I feel that I can't keep a job. I just keep it. And in fact, my now departed grandmother always thought every time I told her I'd move here. That is exactly what happened. I was able to keep a job and I got it. But that's not the case. I have been with the Foreign Affairs for a good number of years now, and very happy to be here in Atlanta now. So with that, good evening, and as we are a bilingual country, and it won't be all the French I will share with you tonight. But thank you, Trevor, and I'd like to thank my friends here at Cobb Chamber of Commerce for hosting this today. Lovely view of the park. Too bad there's not a game on, but it's better yet to keep your concentration on things that are more important, Canada and the Georgia relationship. So Trevor and the Global Atlanta, thank you for doing the legwork for this and helping to highlight the dynamic trade and investment relationship between Canada and Georgia. And I did want to just say thank you to all the participants tonight. Beginning with a friend and colleague, David Weiner, who I've known for many years. We crossed paths in the strangest of places with the Foreign Service. So David and I go back to Brasilia 25 years ago. And then next time is, of course, in Atlanta. So it's just the flow and ebb of the Foreign Service. I'm not going to introduce the people, but I just want to acknowledge them because during the course of this evening, you'll hear all about who they are, wonderful contributions they make to this relationship. But Laura Dawson, Ina, kids from the Milena, something like that. Thank you. Julia Egresi, Jean-François Marchand, Patrick Gervais, and Benoit Montreuil, and Trevor yourself. Thank you for your contributions and your participation this evening. It's true, I've only been here a relatively short time, coming up on 3 months, but I am really thrilled to see how the relationship is in this part of the US, and how multifaceted and international it really is. Of course, you are all aware of the importance of the U.S. Canada relationship. And I too, having done that assignment in Seattle, was very much educated in the scope and the depth and the growth of the U.S. Canada relationship. But perhaps I wasn't as up to date on how dynamic and how deep that relationship was in this part of the country. So I've been upscaling myself. I've been learning a lot about the relationship here, and I can attest to the fact that the Canada-U.S. economic partnership is as strong in this part of the country, in fact, stronger than any other part of the U.S. that I have witnessed. We talked, you heard some numbers, diplomats, we love to trot out numbers all the time because it somehow validates everything, right? But the two-way relationship between Canada and just our 6 states that the consulate is responsible for is worth over $54 billion last year. And Trevor mentioned the burgeoning trade relationship with Costa Rica, which clocks in at about 100 billion. Yes, so the relative importance, because it's just with the state of Georgia, never mind the footprint we have here, is a magnitude of importance far beyond that relationship. Not that these other trading relationships are important, they're extremely important in our diversification. But that 54 billion is higher also than the trading relationship with Mexico. Yeah, it's a pretty significant partner. And with respect to foreign direct investment in the region, there are roughly 1,200 Canadian companies across those 6 states that we represent out of Atlantic here. They employ 110,000 Americans. So if I do the math, I definitely need to get more resources. So I will send that up to Ottawa and see what happens. So the scope and scale of the relationship, not to mention the continual growth, even in the midst of a pandemic, underscores, I think more than anything, the dramatic fashion and the robust nature of the relationship with the U.S. Southeast, but particularly with Georgia. I think nothing can underscore that even more than the upcoming SUS-CP Alliance, which will hold its 13th annual conference in Savannah in just under 2 weeks. And it really further underscores the evolution and the linkages that continue to expand in the Georgia-Canada relationship. It accompanies the continued and complementary growth of trade and investment between the Canadian provinces, that's the CP part of the name, and the Southeast U.S. States. And it is a partnership. And in the economic powerhouse that is Georgia, it is really the heart and soul of that partnership. As of last year, for the 8th consecutive year, Georgia was named by Area Development Magazine, I'm sure you all subscribe, as the top state for doing business. And that's reflected by the context we have within the business and investment community, who continually mention Georgia as one of their primary states and the ease of doing business as being their point of entry into the U.S., into growing U.S. markets, but also entry into U.S. markets. As I've already highlighted, Canadian companies are well aware of the benefits of doing business with Georgia, a fact that our guest speakers will highlight and detail further on tonight. I did mention numbers and the fact that we love to underscore those as our validation of our efforts and our success in growing the economic relationship. So here are a few more. In Georgia alone, there are over 300 Canadian-owned companies, and within the county of Cobb, 28. So pretty good. And these businesses employ over 45,000 workers across the state. But it's a balanced relationship. It's not just trade and investment into Georgia from Canada. It's trade and investment from Georgia into Canada, and trade investment from Canada into Georgia. So 1,150 businesses in Cobb and over 2,100 jobs in Cobb County depend upon goods and service exports to Canada. So helps to illustrate the balanced nature of our relationship. Two-way trade between Georgia and Canada alone was valued at $11.2 billion last year. And interestingly enough, that exceeds pre-pandemic numbers. So although we've all suffered through a long and tortuous pandemic, trade and investment between Canada and Georgia, and between Canada and the US, has not suffered. With $6.2 billion in export to Canada, making Canada one of Georgia's, making Canada, once again, Georgia's #1 customer for more than 3 decades in a row. So not to embarrass other countries, it's not my job, but I will. So that number, that two-way trade, is bigger than two-way trade with the UK, bigger than the UK, the trade with France, and as I mentioned, even bigger than the trade with our son of NAFTA, USMCA partner, Mexico. And places like China, never heard of it, but it also doesn't figure in those trade numbers. So the depth and scope and magnitude of the Canada-Georgia, Canada-US relationship on trade investment places and creates a relationship, a business and investment relationship like none other. But as I said, all these countries, all these trading relationships, as well as Canada's relationship with Georgia, are doing well. And they're here in Georgia because the folks in Georgia, the folks in Cobb County, have made it easy to do business here. And that's why that relationship is well-founded, well-grounded, and in an international environment, and will continue to grow. Of course, while the trade numbers are great, the importance of our ties between Canada and Georgia are not only an economic relationship, but they are underpinned by a mutual interest in security and strong people-to-people. Obvious, Canada is right next door, so we're bound together by geography and an intertwined history and a fairly integrated economic and integration that is underpinned by many shared values and a resolve to do better for our citizens. So I would like to close by just highlighting the fact that next year is our 50th anniversary of maintaining a consulate here in Atlanta. And I think it's nothing better than a signal and a sign of the surefire importance of the Canada-Georgia relationship and our continuity here and our early recognition that Georgia was the place to be. Georgia was the place to anchor our relationship in the U.S. Southeast. So on behalf of Canada and my friends who participated this evening, thank you for being here. I want to thank the people at Cobb and for making this event possible. And please enjoy a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank
you. Is it in the French or is it in the English or the third language?
Well, yeah, there aren't heaps of francophones in Atlanta. And if you made it this far south, you're probably going to speak to us in English. But we're a bilingual country and we offer our services in French and English. And so it really depends on our client. If they want to come and interface with us in French, by all means.
Thank you so much. We'll get into some of that with our representatives here. Yes, thank you. On schedule, I'm going to go ahead and get us into the presentations, but to give you a sense for why we're here and why we're doing this right now, I want to just give a very quick orientation. So, the Global Atlanta, which is an international business news service here in Atlanta, that's been around since the early 1990s. Sorry about the Yeah, well, I'll speak over the drill here. Global Atlanta, we cover how Georgia connects with the rest of the world. Obviously, you serve the Consul General how well connected we are to Canada. But timing-wise, the Consul General mentioned there's a huge conference coming up in Savannah, the Southeast United States Canadian Provinces Alliance Conference. That was inaugurated 15 years ago. Georgia and Quebec were really the drivers behind that. And of course, Global Atlanta was there reporting on it. It was inaugurated in 2007. And the first conference was held in Savannah. So it's kind of coming full circle. So that was one reason. But for us, our partners are focused on on Canada. So I want to thank Cobb Chamber, which is strategically focused on Canada. I want to thank the Consul General of Canada that actually supported my trip up to Quebec in April. And then Medicom Firm is one of Global Atlanta's partners as well as one of the Cobb Chamber's partners. And then the Pendleton Group, which is represented here by Charles Shapiro, and Jorge and Guy are somewhere around. They're focused intently on Canada as well, also one of our partners. So it just made a lot of sense for us to really focus and put our lens on Canada. Why Quebec? Right now, the focus is really heavily on new future-facing kind of industries. Georgia is obviously creating a cluster when it comes to electric vehicles, particularly on the passenger side. And we've been writing about big investments in that sector. Quebec, as I found out, is doing the same, but on the fleet side, on the ground transportation side. And I think that's emblematic of the fact that Quebec has been positioning itself as a complementary partner to Georgia for a really long time, and has had its delegation here in Atlanta since, I guess, '78. So that's why I chose to focus on Quebec now. But the SUCP is 6 states, 6 provinces, so I think you see a lot of future with the I'm going to turn this to our virtual presentations because our goal here is hopefully to let them speak because they can't hear the drill. And then also to showcase what we do. Global Atlanta, we like to report on what's happening here in Atlanta. We also go overseas into other countries to report on inbound investment coming in, Georgia exports going out. And these are companies that I've reported on in some shape or form. One that already has a presence here in the form of Medicom, which has a factory in Augusta. One that's been exploring in the form of U.Go work. And then Lion Electric, which we hope will at some point be here. They're building a big factory in Illinois, so we missed out on that one. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over right now. We're going to do some virtual quick presentations. Jean-Francois Marchand, U.Go work, is going to start us off. And then we're going to run through these hopefully in 5 or 6 minutes and let them explain to you what they do and how they're part of Quebec's sort of transition to clean energy future. So, if we can get Jean-Francois pulled up, if you got your presentation you want to share, hopefully our teams will be able to see that. And I'll let you explain what y'all do. And I was able to go to their facility in Quebec City, which is, again, hopefully going to be a stronger partner with the Cobb Chamber. Jean-Francois.
All right. Can you guys hear me all right?
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Jean-Francois. I can go by JF if that's easier. So I'm glad to represent U.Go Work today. So I'm going to present a little bit of what we do, and it will guide you into the reasons why it makes sense to partner with Georgia. So U.Go Work is a energy expert team who applies that expertise to forklift batteries. So why forklifts? Because even though today you hear every day about electric cars that have batteries, still forklifts use a technology that dates from the 1950s and that has not evolved a lot since. So I'm talking about lead acid batteries. So we bring something different to ease the pains of the material handling world. Right now, in material handling, there's a lot of maintenance and issues with hazardous substances such as sulfuric acid. Also, it requires a very heavy infrastructure for charging of those batteries. And for intense applications, they require battery rooms to swap batteries. So those rooms have to be in one area of a factory, and workers have to travel a lot to just change batteries. So it's a lot of downtime in the operation. Also, the efficiency of lead acid is not as good as lithium. So the electricity cost and proportionally the carbon emission are high with such a technology. So these are all things that the lithium ion will tackle. So the charging speed of lithium is 5 times faster. So you don't have to swap batteries. Basically, the same battery remains in a forklift, and just charging during breaks and lunchtime allows for the operation to happen. 71% more efficient in terms of energy consumption. So, like I said before, for electricity and also carbon footprint, that has a big impact. There's practically no maintenance with that technology, and it lasts 5 times longer. Also, there's a strong recyclability potential with lithium ion, so that brings in the possibility to go towards a circular economy. And also the products are certified by independent laboratories. So this is just a quick video to show you the lithium ion product that we have. So it's a core that has counterweights that can fit to the battery to adapt to any truck size or requirement. It features lithium ion cells that are NMC. It can work in cold or hot environment because there's a temperature management system. And the batteries are equipped with a BMS, so a battery management system that gathers all the information to a cloud. And we have embedded chargers that allow to have a very small and compact charging station that connects with an EV type connector. So that's the battery there that you saw really quickly. Let me just turn that off. So I talked about the cloud. So we gather data from the batteries real time. So temperature, voltage, any type of signal from the battery is gathered to a cloud. And we have a surveillance system that monitors the health of the batteries in real time. So that allows us to properly manage the operation of our customers and be proactive when making maintenance. Another thing that is made possible by data is the match of a customer success manager with each of our customers. So we have the information about their operation, all the energy they consume, so we can help them reduce their energy consumption for the same amount of work, eventually reduce the fleet size, so by doing more with less, and at the end of the day, increase their throughput. So this is all interesting, but lithium as a price, it's more expensive on the upfront cost than lead acid battery. So that's why we came up with the energy as a service program. So basically, it's a monthly fee that allows our customers to access to battery charging station, the whole infrastructure to get the cloud monitoring and the field service, and also the operation optimization with the customer success managers. So that was about the product, the offer. A few words about UGoWork. So we are based out of Quebec City in the province of Quebec, approximately 50 employees. Half of them are engineers. Our annual production capacity is approximately 1,000 units. And we have a presence in the US through a network of dealers. So these people do the service of our products on site. So we do everything from design to manufacturing the product, deploy it to the customer place, support it, like I said, with the cloud, and help the customers optimize. We have products that fit classes 1, 2, and 3 of forklifts, so different sizes and requirements. And yeah, we position ourselves really as energy partners for our customers. This is what it looks like for customers using lead acid batteries. Basically, if the intensity of the application is not there, the technology is still good, it fits. But as soon as you get into a pattern where you have 2 shifts or 3 shifts of operation and a lot of energy being consumed, then the maintenance issues arise, the life of the product is shortened. So the total cost of ownership of the solution is becoming really high, and it takes a lot of manpower to actually manage that. So with the energy as a service solution, it's a monthly fee that is proportional to the energy usage. So it's predictable, and in the end, after a certain tipping point, which is approximately 2 shifts a day or 2,000 hours per year, there are savings that are made possible. So we have customers with applications in those markets, and basically it's not just about the market; it's more about the criterias to get a fit. So we're talking about the 2,000 hours a year, early battery disposal, productivity issues, operation in hot or cold environment, space taken by battery rooms, labor shortage, because of course you can do more with less. The cost, obviously, if you have that kind of application, there will be a ROI. And also we have a lot of customers who nowadays have sustainability goals, carbon emission reduction objectives. So that's also a very good way to address that. And I'm just gonna finish with Georgia and the reason why it's a fit. So we see a huge potential and synergy with Georgia. There are many sophisticated companies looking for ways to become more competitive while being socially and environmentally responsible. And also data resonates through those companies. So we feel that they can see the value in our solution. We have great support from trade delegations from Quebec, Canada, and also the Georgia Department of Economic Development. We've been at the MODEX trade show in Atlanta in March, and yeah, we will be at the SUSE CP conference in Savannah. Thank you very much.
And we're going to just move right to Juliana Agresti. I hope I said that correctly. Vice President of Supply Chain for Medicom. And Medicom's a maker of masks and other medical products. But let's see if we can get Juliana pulled up. And Juliana, if you have a presentation to share, go for it.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me at this event. Thank you for the trade delegation of Quebec in Atlanta for making it possible for Medicom to be part of the event and then present to you. I also like to thank the speaker before me, Jean-François Marchand from Mugowerk. I've taken a lot of notes. I'm very interested in this technology. Let me introduce myself and explain why I'm interested. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain for North America, for the Medicom Group in North America. And supply chain is in the business of supplying raw materials for manufacturing and supplying products for distribution. And therefore we are in the moving of products and pallets, and I could be a very interesting customer for UGOWork, and I'd like to propose our company for a pilot. So let's connect. I'd like to share a presentation with you. I'm going to share my screen.
See it. You're muted now. Wouldn't be a Zoom call if we didn't have some kind of challenge. Can you hear us okay for now? I think you might still be muted.
Let me try this again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, but when I'm sharing, you cannot hear me. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, let me try this again.
We do have your slides on our end too, so if that helps, we can pull it up on our end.
Okay, how about this? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, is that large enough?
I think so. Let's not introduce any more variables.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to get into this. So Medicom Group has been founded in 1988. We have been in the business of supplying personal protective equipment, and our mission at Medicom and our commitment is to help make the world safer and healthier by providing effective and reliable protection. The products that we are in distributing or in manufacturing are procedure masks at ASTM level 1, 2, and 3, the N95 respirators, visors, pediatric mass ion masks, gloves, gowns, disinfectants, and many, many much more products. We offer a whole menu of personal protective equipment. A little bit more about the group. The Medicom Group is a world leader in infection control, and we are proud to announce that for the second year in a row, we've been named best managed companies in Canada. We are conducting business in over 95 countries in the world. And in 2020, we sold 2.5 billion masks and 5.5 billion gloves. Obviously, this has been driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, and this presentation is a little bit outdated, today we are producing over 2 million masks daily in Montreal. And we have 13 factories all over the world with 17 sales offices, all together employing more than 2,000 people. We have, when the pandemic hit, Medicom Group was able to respond quite quickly and get into contracts with the various governments. You see here the flags, the Canadian government, the Quebec provincial government, Taiwan, the UK, France, we have been able to respond the request from these governments to provide masks very, very quickly in the situation where the mask supply from Asia and especially China was very scarce, limited, and at one point it even stopped. So our pandemic response, as a first level of response, is we were able to import hundreds of millions of procedure masks and also N95 respirators from China, essentially. That was in the early days of 2020. And then immediately based on these government contracts that we managed to secure, we launched our manufacturing plant in Montreal, in Quebec, Canada. And we are very proud of that achievement because we've created a mask manufacturing facility from scratch in less than 4 months, producing procedural masks and N95 respirators, and able to respond to the pandemic by protecting frontline workers, not just in the province of Quebec, but all over Canada. The reason governments choose Medicom is that we have an established, over 33 years of experience, an established presence in many countries, and most importantly, we have certifications. You see it on the screen. Various certifications for our products in medical device. We pride ourselves on producing to the highest standards, and we use high quality raw materials. Since the start of the pandemic, we have also focused on creating sovereignty in manufacturing PPE, firstly on masks and respirators, and secondly on gloves. What does that mean, sovereignty? It's not enough to establish a manufacturing facility, have it validated, certified by NIOSH, which is National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health in the United States, and Health Canada for the Canadian equivalent. But it's important also, and it's crucial, that we secure the raw material supply so that we will never again be dependent on other nations in the case of a next pandemic. Unfortunately, we know that this was not the last pandemic that we will, in our lifetimes. We think that there will be more. So we are creating a supply chain, a robust, reliable supply chain that is as much as possible independent from geopolitical events and geopolitical tensions. So as I mentioned, we are very proud of our 90 days to build a factory in Canada. We have transformed an existing warehouse, added 15 new production lines. At the same time, we had to secure machinery that was not readily available in North America. Mask manufacturing has been quite limited in North America, and I will talk about it in a second. So we had to basically align our logistics capabilities so that everything that is necessary to build a plant in such a record time could be imported, transported, and you'll see examples here: conveyors, ventilation systems, packaging systems, by express cargo. We have established a very strong partnership with a Quebec-based company during the pandemic. And thanks to this partnership, we were able to make that response. I mentioned that in the very first days of the pandemic, so we're talking about February, March, April 2020, we have imported hundreds of millions of masks from China. Without the support and the strong connection with our logistics partner, our transportation partner, this would not have been possible. During the pandemic, we also, of course, had to find and train employees. So we started off with 33 employees, and we are over 100 employees in Montreal as we expanded this manufacturing facility. After the startup, we took another 3 months, 90 days to increase the production of N95s. Surgical masks were our first step. Respirators was the second step, and we needed to make sure that these respirators respond to the highest quality standard. So we proceeded to a validation by NIOSH, and we were the first ones, Canadian-owned company, first ones to secure an N95 certification in Canada. We received that in October 2021.
Hey, Juliana, we have about maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, so thank you. So this is my last slide, but it's the most important one. Our manufacturing is deeply rooted in Georgia, USA. Our CEO has partnered up with a local entrepreneur in 1997, and our partner company called United Medical Enterprises, that was up until recently based in Allen Station Road, moved to Thompson just 9 months ago, and into a brand new facility that is, I'm proud to say, best in class. You're seeing a picture here. And this facility employs over 150 people. And it's not just focusing on production of masks, but it's producing sterilization pouches, bibs, and other products. The facility has over 25 years of experience and a well-anchored presence in Augusta. And we also have a warehouse in Columbus, Ohio. So we are very proud of this partnership. United Medical Enterprises is a very important part of the Medicom Group. And without them, we would not be able to supply our large customer base in the United States. Thank you for your attention. And I don't know if there is a question period, but I'm standing by for your questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have one at the end. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, moving on quickly, we have Josephine Allen, who's the Senior Director of Relationship Marketing at Lion Electric. And just a quick note, Lion was the first factory I visited, so I flew in like very late on Sunday night and then got up really early in the morning, drove out there, and it made the trip worth it right off the bat. It was really interesting to see their production at their facility in Saint-Germain. So, Joe, if you have your presentation, I'm going to pull it up.
I sure do.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good night. Thanks for having us here. I'm actually personally pretty excited to be speaking with you tonight. I've got lots of great memories from Atlanta, having spent many years at IHG Hotels, your neighbor there in Dunwoody. So I'm very pleased to be with you this evening. I just wanted to start by saying, Georgia is a very important market for us. At Lion, we have electric buses and heavy and medium duty trucks. And for us, Georgia, having both highly urban and rural school bus routes, it's a great market on the bus side. And then from the trucking perspective, Georgia's got one of the largest ports in the country. And so intermodal urban transport and drayage, which is the first mile, is really, they're both great opportunities for decarbonization. So let me just, you guys can see my screen now. So at Lion, we started on this journey in, oops, sorry, hold on, double screens here, 13 years ago, designing the first electric school bus. And since then, we now have over 600 vehicles in operation on the roads today, which may sound like a small number for some when you compare to the amount of vehicles on the road, but it is actually the largest number of electric commercial vehicles on the road in North America. And with that large number of vehicles on the road comes a lot of experience solving problems. So 10 million miles have been driven, as opposed to some others who are just starting to prototype or doing field testing, lab testing. We've actually got customers relying on our vehicles every single day. As was mentioned, we have a factory in St. Jerome. Thank you, Trevor, for your visit. And we're producing 2,500 vehicles per year. Now, even more exciting for you in Georgia is we've got a factory that's being built in Joliet, Illinois, not too far away. And the capacity there will be 25,000 vehicles per year, 20,000. And we're expected to be rolling those off the production line by the end of this year. In addition to a battery plant that we have in Quebec, which will allow us to have that vertical integration and having control over a very critical component of our vehicles. We also have experience centers around North America to make sure that we can be close to our customers and ensure that we can service them, and over 1,100 employees. So here's what the roadmap looks like. We go from a Class 6 truck all the way up to a Class 8 and the different applications. You can get a glimpse at some of them there. And then we have school buses and transit buses. There are a number of varieties that are coming up this year as well. You can see there's a bucket truck for utilities, the boom truck, ambulance is underway as well, and another new school bus model. So this is just kind of focusing in on a couple of those applications. We actually delivered our first refrigerated truck in BC last week in conjunction with some partners there. The ambulance is underway in development, as is the refuse and the bucket trucks. So what's different about Lion? Well, I guess we can start first by saying what's different about electric. And as JF had mentioned, there's a lot of inherent benefits just to being electric. So number one, from a vehicle perspective, an electric motor has 20 parts versus a diesel engine, which typically has about 2,000 parts. So already you can see that it's much simpler to manage, and the maintenance costs as a result naturally will go down. And at Lion, we build our own chassis and body. We assemble our battery packs. And as mentioned, we actually will be manufacturing them very soon out of Mirabel. And we have more kilowatt hours available than any other OEM on the market today. One other thing that's interesting about having our composite body is that there's no rust, no corrosion. Probably not a problem in Atlanta, in Georgia, but certainly in the Midwest and in Canada, I can tell you that rust from salt and our harsh winters is absolutely a consideration. So with no paint, no downtime, and no corrosion, that certainly is a benefit for a lot of our customers. Regenerative braking allows your brakes to last 3 times longer. And they're not retrofitted to be electric. They're actually designed from the ground up. So what that means is that there's no compromise. It's optimized to be electric. So we take best use of every design opportunity to optimize the fleet and its operation and its running. And then really, I think what makes Lion particularly unique is we've created an ecosystem of services to ensure that we're helping customers not just understand what vehicle they need, but of course, you need to be able to power these vehicles. So we've developed different teams for every aspect of the business. So whether it's from our Lion Grants team who helps you figure out what funds are available. As an example, the EPA, there's a $500 million clean school bus program right now. Our team is there to help take that off their plates. We can do the applications for the school districts as an example. And if not that program, there's many, many, many others from federal and state level, and really helping customers understand where they can maximize their funding opportunities, all the way to figuring out your right charging infrastructure. How do you get these vehicles powered up, and what's going to work best for your operations? There are financing solutions as well, as Jeff kind of alluded to, from the total cost of ownership. And you can see in the beginning of the years, they may be a little bit more expensive up front, but you're going to save money when you hit that tipping point. Well, on the capital solution side, we can actually help you start saving from day one, because we can amortize, we can leverage the fuel and the maintenance savings in order to fund the acquisition of your vehicle and make it actually cost beneficial from day one. And then, of course, there's all the post-sale service components. So we have a Bright Squad that can deliver local service. Lion Beat is the telematics, which allows you to optimize your fleet operations and the battery management, the charging, all of the management of all those pieces. And of course, there's Lion Academy also, which helps training, because this is a different way of driving, but also managing the fleets. So the training team is there to help transition and build up that knowledge for this new technology. So just to summarize, I tried to be really brief because I knew that we had a lot to cover in the agenda. So number one, Lion's got the most experience on the road as an electric manufacturer of medium and heavy duty vehicles, global experience in the deployment of these fleets. And really the main focus of our company, that's all we do, is 100% electric all day long. And with the design of our products being built to be electric, there are inherent benefits that come because of that. Certainly our dedicated grants team, funding is a big part when you're dealing with an early market, you know, helping customers really be able to replace those at an affordable price is a big focus for our team. And we do have dedicated team of experts across every piece of that ecosystem. And that is really what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you so much. I didn't get a Lion like model, school bus, or truck for my 6-year-old or my 3-year-old, because I think that would be a big hit. But that's the only like presentation for my job that you would have given. But anyway, wanted to bring up our in-person panelists. We also have, and if y'all are okay to stay on for the Q&A, you're welcome to. If you have to jump off, totally understandable. It's a little bit high. But Benoit Montoy is going to join us for the panel portion, and then we've also got David Miner and Laura Dawson. Y'all come on up, and I'll introduce you. It should work.
You go, babe.
I'm sorry.
I want to move these chairs a little bit.
You can. You are the boss.
I'm not really, but I'm very bossy.
All right. So Laura is the Executive Director of Future Borders Coalition. I'm going to let you tell everybody about this. I don't want to get too deep into the intro at time. But you're coming from, your most recent position was North American Lead for Amazon Web Services Institute, if I read that right. Served as Director of the Canada Institute at the Woodrow Wilson International Center. You're a Senior Economic Specialist in the U.S. Embassy in Canada. There's a lot to go over here. I want to jump into the panel discussion, so I'm not going to do everything. David, I'll turn to you. David was instrumental in pretty much organizing my entire trip for me, so I want to thank David for that. Really introduced me to a lot of these great companies that you've heard from today. But David was appointed Quebec's delegate in Atlanta in March of 2021. He had a really long commute to get from his former job to the downtown office. He was previously senior consul and senior trade commissioner at the Canadian Consulate General of Canada. So he moved, just down the road. And David's got a long career, posted in 7 locations, diplomatic corps. And then I was pleased to figure out he had international sales and marketing positions in the pharmaceutical and vaccine industry. So he got me into meet with a company called Medicom, which is doing vaccines out of tobacco plants, which I thought was fascinating, and just really understands business really well. So it's not something you always find. And then of course, Benoit Montoy. Benoit, thank you. You can unmute yourself finally.
Yeah, I'm fine. Good. Pleasure to be with you. Bonjour à tous.
Yeah, thank you. Benoit's in Montreal right now, so unfortunately we couldn't get him here, but so thankful that he joined us remotely. Benoit is the Coca-Cola Chair in Material Handling and Distribution and the Director of the Supply Chain and Logistics Institute at Georgia Tech. And I think what's cool about Benoit is he is a big advocate of what he calls the physical internet. And so he knows a lot about intermodality and transportation and logistics. And so we're going to really get into some of that here. I wanted to kind of start with Laura. We heard from some of our companies, obviously, the reshaping of supply chains after the pandemic was a big issue. And it's still something that's ongoing. We're still dealing with this now. There's kind of a nationalist sentiment in a lot of cases going on, or at least I feel that we need to, like was said by Juliana, need to kind of keep our production close so we don't create vulnerabilities. So I guess just, can you just give us a sense for what you do, and then talk about how things with U.S. Canada on the border side kind of unfold during the pandemic.
Great, thanks. Yeah, what I do, what I'm up to, and what's up with trade in the border. So it seems weird that I'm running a Canada-U.S. border organization out of Atlanta, where you cannot see a physical Canadian border for a good ways, but I'm trying to improve Canada-Georgia relations by marrying myself a man from Georgia, a wonderful man from Georgia, and making Atlanta my home. But if you think of borders not as being a physical line in the sand, but rather a series of horizontal corridors that begin when one of our panelists has to get some licensing from Health Canada in order to move a product between Georgia and Canada, and at the end has to work through Customs and Border Protection, and also has issues related to regulatory issues in the state of Georgia or the province of Quebec. Those are all border issues. And so that's why I'm working on the Future Borders Coalition, which is a group of 200 trains, planes, and automobiles, multimodal organizations, service providers in air, land, rail, to try to work with the governments of Canada and the United States to make borders better and easier for travel and for trade. I come from a trade background. I've been a trade policy professor. I've worked with both governments of Canada and the governments of the United States on trade facilitation issues and just how to get the stuff that we need between a willing buyer and a willing seller, whether those two individuals happen to be in Montreal and Toronto or Atlanta and Montreal, making those border measures easier to get through and cutting through the regulatory red tape. Are borders better or worse? What's up with borders in this post-pandemic or after the big interruption? In many cases, our supply chains were able to stay pretty darned intact. Thank you very much. God bless the government of Canada and the government of the United States. Our major officials worked together over a process of about 72 hours in order to figure out how to keep that northern border open to essential services and essential trade. And as Consul General Hill has already told you, it's an extremely important, robust relationship. $1.9 billion a day in trade goes across that border. So if you close that for even a day, that is a huge cost to buyers and to sellers. So we actually managed to keep those supply chains fairly well running and established, but there's been lots of lockups through the entire global supply chain business. Can't get the containers where you need to go, can't get room at the ports, and all of that has knock-on effects, which affects U.S. Canada trade as well. So that's what my organization is focused on, is trying to get business moving again, trying to get things going where they're supposed to go. And there's certainly a lot more room from where we were to where we need to be. One of the points that I want to make, and I'll stop and let David talk for a while, is the reason why some of you are surprised when you see the numbers on U.S.-Canada trade is that Canada doesn't seem like a foreign trading nation. Canada is just a neighbor that we do a lot of business with. It seems like domestic trade until something happens, until a border closes, until you hit a regulatory barrier and go, oh my God, we are different. Why the heck can't I get Health Canada to put the right label on my product? Or why is my truck stuck at the border between Detroit and Windsor? And as soon as there's those holdups, you go, oh yeah, we are foreign trading partners. But what we want to see moving forward is what Janet Yellen has called friend shoring. We cannot go back to the days of just making everything domestically, but we can look at ways to trade and produce and buy and sell with trading partners whom we trust, who we can access easily without our business culture and way of doing business. And the U.S. Canada trading relationship embodies that friend shoring concept.
Great. I actually wanted to bring Benoit in, if you don't mind, on that front, because Benoit, this is your field of study, obviously. I wonder how much you feel that the shifts that have happened are permanent. How much is this friendshoring or reshoring going to be a lasting trend versus just something that people are kind of talking about right now because it's still fresh in our minds?
No, this is a very important topic that will be with us for next decade at least. Okay, so basically there's been a reaction. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. In the last 30, 40 years, there's been a lot of globalization, and people have learned through practice to treat the global supply chain as a lean supply chain. So everything is going to be on the clock, exactly predicted, and so on. And so they used teachings from the Toyota production system a long time ago, but that was made for a stable system, and they used it and generalized it and took it as granted for something that is in fact not that stable. And then with COVID, it just exploded. Okay, so everything that was thought to be stable just went all over the board, and we had all kinds of things from imports being blocked, transportation to be killed, to have our manpower ill or forbidden to go to work. We had demand in some domains that were going down, so going up. So all these notions were really a big deal. So all this has created insecurity in a bunch of people. And so the reflex is say, let me be as autonomous as possible and make sure that within my region, I'm going to have everything needed and within my country and so on. This is a reflex that is normal. It's just that we have to quiet it down a bit and understand that it's not going to be all autonomy, everywhere. This is still an interconnected global chain, and we have to play with this. So it's going to be balanced, but people will never go back to the strict lean all across the world. They have learned that we need to have buffers at places. We need to deal with resiliencies and agility and adaptability must be there, be able to react very fast. We saw it earlier with Medicom. We had to turn itself on the spin, in a few months just to be able to get those PPE that people were really wanting, but were caught because the ships were not coming from China. So we're going to see this kind of thing, but I don't think that it's going to be like everything made back in the U.S. or made back in Canada, and no, I don't think that's going to be the principle. But we're going to be working with countries and regions that we trust, with partners that we trust, and those that we trust less will have more production time or storage buffer to deal with. So it's kind of a middle ground. But telling that we're going to go back to the old ways that were old 3 years ago, no, I don't believe this will happen. So it's a mixture.
Yeah, I guess if we use the internet analogy, it's redundancy, right? We are redundancy. But yeah, it seems to be that in heavily regulated industries, a lot of companies are setting up like multiple, perhaps smaller operations, particularly when it comes to ground transportation. Obviously, we saw that Ryan needs its factory in Joliet, Illinois, largely, I think, Jill will correct me, she's not on there anymore, so I can say it. I think because it's going to be, they're going to be applying for deals to have federal funding involved, and for federal funding, you have Buy American provisions that you cannot fulfill those contracts if you're producing outside the U.S. So I think you're seeing a lot more bifurcation of production facilities, and actually that might end up being good for Georgia, because you see a lot of investment most likely coming in from companies that need to deal with that. But David, how are y'all thinking about that at the Quebec office in Atlanta? Give us a sense for your presence here, what you're focused on, really on the commercial side, which has been very strategic.
Well, first off, I'd like to say good evening, a lot of old friends and new friends. Thank you for sacrificing part of your evening to be with us here this evening. I'm looking across at the baseball park and wishing I brought my mitt, because you never know when you're going to get a foul ball. But I just wanted to pick up on the last conversation before I talk about Quebec, if you allow me. se parle à tout le monde aussi. Ça fait plaisir d'être ici avec tout le monde. You know, when I went to school centuries ago, the big thought was international life cycle, international product cycle, reduce costs by moving your production offshore, outsourcing. And everybody made this huge rush to reduce their costs. They were very good at that. But what they didn't do is calculate the cost of risk. And, you know, disaster is unavoidable, whether it's a natural disaster like an earthquake or a hurricane or a ship running, you know, blocking the Suez Canal, or if it's a man-made disaster, or, like the war that we're seeing in Ukraine, or if it's something like a pandemic, things are going to go wrong. And what's important is that we not, I think was the word you used on supply chain, redundancy. I like to say resiliency, because, and so now companies are rushing to shorten their supply chains. They're rushing to costing that risk. We saw a bunch of tariffs applied to U.S. imports, which also really just upset things, and then the pandemic. And so we had Medicom speaking earlier. There was a huge rush for PPE because of the pandemic. There were flights in China where one country's army was taking away products from another country's air force on the ground. We had countries refusing to export products, to export vaccines. So the world's changed dramatically. And what I want to emphasize is we're in one North American boat together. We cannot afford to allow protectionism to get in the way of our trade. We need a border that works, and we need supply chains that work. So that was my quick plug on that. As far as the Quebec office, yeah, we've been here. We're the new kids on the block. We're going to our 45th year, not the 50th year like the Consulate, but we followed the leader, and we're happy to be part of this community, part of Atlanta, part of Georgia, part of the Southeast. The Southeast is our fastest growing region. It's where our exports are growing the most. We have to be here. It's a region less well known because it's further away from the border. So Quebecers know New England, the Atlantic states really well, and vice versa. And they know Florida really well, but there's that big gap in the rest of the Southeast where we're learning about each other. And part of our work is to build the linkages between everyone. Trade, you want me to talk about trade between Quebec and Georgia? Or is that
not necessarily the numbers, but
okay.
Just, yeah, I guess you awakened me to this kind of green energy focus in Quebec. I wonder if you might talk about that, and the fact that unique ways that Quebec is qualified to potentially be at the vanguard of the circular economy. So
yeah, one of at the forefront of Quebec's policies is our plan for a green economy for 2030. It's a very ambitious 10-year strategy that seeks to reduce our carbon emissions to 37.5% of the levels of 1990, and to ultimately reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And getting there, there's 5 parts of this, but the main part of it is focused on electrification of the economy, especially all forms of transportation and mobility. Quebec is blessed. 99.7% of our electric power comes from clean, renewable sources. So we have abundant power, we have cheap electric power, and we have clean power that's renewable. This sets Quebec up competitively to compete very nicely with other regions of North America. It also it allows us to reduce our carbon footprint. We have also a very ambitious plan. We've put a cost on carbon, and so emitters are going to have to play in the carbon market, isn't it? They're going to have to play in the carbon market. They're going to get so many credits, and then they're going to have to reduce their carbon emissions to get more credits and trade credits. So you saw Yuba Works, you saw Lion Electric, and there are many more companies like this that are at the forefront of innovating on electric transportation, electric mobility. We also happen to have virtually all of the strategic minerals needed for making batteries. We have the lithium, we have the nickel, we have the graphite. So we're blessed that way. We have the technology. We're working on the new versions of solid state batteries. We making tremendous advances in the recycling of batteries as well. Yeah, electrification is all about where Quebec is and where it's headed.
Definitely. And another company I went to was Nova Bus. It's just making its new electric buses, but they're not just making electric buses. They're kind of along the same transition line that we're all going through. Apparently, it's about 1% of transit buses that are on the road are electrified now, and it's only about 1 to 2% of school buses. So these companies have huge runway for growth, and they're going to be potentially at the forefront of this transition. But all of them have so far are building a U.S. presence as well. Nova Bus with Plattsburgh, New York. So we'll see if
we also have the largest Canadian fleet of electric vehicles, including passenger cars in Canada. Again, a reflection of the importance of electrification in Quebec and public transportation as well. It's not just limited to passenger cars and trucks.
For sure. Well, Benoit, I don't know. You said your bandwidth was low. I wanted to bring you in on that too, because you said, I think you told me before, you retired from Université Laval, but then you came down to Georgia Tech. Tell us about the intellectual underpinning. I mean, it's not just, it's one thing to make a battery. It's another thing to really have the chops to put together the whole electric supply chain. And as far as I understand, Quebec has had a lot of intellectual firepower that's gone into this transition, including yourself, obviously.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this transition to electric is electric transportation and electric logistics, electric mobility. We focus a lot on the battery and the engine. This is very important. Okay, it will always be. Lithium has its advantages, its disadvantages. Many times people talk about the clean batteries, clean energy. They talk about once the battery is done, but the battery not making the battery is still demanding on the environment. So all this is going to be very important. But I think that overall we have to look much wider than this. It's the overall fleets that we need. It's the overall charging system. It's the overall logic of how we're going to do transportation in these systems, these ways. And today, even though we put a lot of emphasis on the electric and the battery, I think it's very important to understand that there are kind of three things happening in the vehicle industry, okay, at the same time. So you've got the electric, okay, the clean energy, I would say. On the other side, you've got the connected vehicle, okay, which make it much more connected, plenty of sensors in interpretation, all the safety that we have now, all the gadgets, etc., that is added to the vehicles. And then third is the autonomy, so getting the vehicles as autonomous as possible, driverless, as a response partly to the first, the lack of truckers and the trucker shortage. Okay, there are many things on this, but I will not elaborate here. And also the fact that the new generation does not dream of owning a car, okay, will buy mobility services, and if they can be driven all the time, they'll do it. So it changes the game hugely on multiple fronts. So the entire supply chain, the kinds of factories, a factory that is designed for the old vehicle. We had Lion Electric making very nice presentation, and they were talking about their vehicles from 30,000 parts to 9,000. That's huge difference. Okay, so the fundamentals of making those vehicles is different, and then the way that we have had like 100 years of building the fuel type of service stations network and all that across the world. Now in a few years and decades, we're trying to do the same thing for electric. But there's all it's good to have chargers, but we need the electricity to make it happen. And do we get this electricity from coal, or luckily from Canada, like in Canada, with the hydroelectricity, which is much cleaner than the other way. And in Quebec, there's huge capacity. So that's why Quebec is a paradise, okay, essentially for working in the electric transportation domain. But all this is not obvious. Then there's a lot of brain, okay. Just at Georgia Tech in the last few days, okay, we had several big meetings, and EV was in the middle of those things, and the autonomous, etc. There are major projects going on. And it's very interdisciplinary, and it's not just Georgia Tech, it's all across the United States, Canada, it's across the world. Okay, there's huge amount of work being done through all the academic, the research, the leading companies to advance the move. So yes, there's a lot of intellectual growth to be done there. And it must not just be focalized on the vehicle or the battery itself, but looking at the full system. And I think, again, that both Lion and Hugo work have done excellent work, showing that it's much more than basics here.
Just one quick anecdote from my visit to Lion. They mentioned that their motor was actually made at Hydro-Quebec, which is the electric utility. And everywhere you go in Quebec, they'll talk about the 97.7% of hydroelectricity. Everybody talks about that, and they should, because you're not moving the emissions from the tailpipe to the smokestack. That's the kind of phrase that people use. You know, if you don't have clean power on the electric production side, you're not actually making the impact you think, or it's going to take longer. But I remember just being a meeting with the Investissement Quebec group, and out the window you could see the Hydro-Quebec building, and they were like, "Look out there! That's what's driving all this." You can see the big orange Q on the building. So, Laura, there's a lot of talk about technology. I think in terms of trade, we often think about physical goods crossing the border, snags at the port, or trucker strikes at the border that keep auto parts from coming in and whatnot. We're all suffering from semiconductor shortages. But what I am hearing from Ra and David is that there's a lot of technical issues that come with the border, whether it be data sharing, or getting people across the border to actually service equipment, or to which is an immigration issue. I wondered if you could talk about that. Is that going to become more of the challenge that you foresee with the border going forward, particularly given your experience with AWS?
Sure. Thanks for that question. I'll start by backing up to something that Benoit said about the 3 or 4 things we have to think about in U.S. Canada electric vehicle trade. I would add that there is a 5th very significant element, which is our international trade agreements. What are the trade agreements that we have in place that regulate and constrain our cross-border trade in any kind of vehicles, including electric vehicles? And these are agreements that have taken decades and decades of impressive lawyering, so that the rules of origin for a finished automotive product, it's a stack of paperwork that's 6 feet tall. Yes, we have integrated supply chains for vehicles, and that's great because the major manufacturers have a lot of really good lawyers. But as soon as there's a government policy change from any side of the border, all of a sudden those lawyers have to go back at work. And it not only disrupts supply chains, it also increases costs for producers, increases costs for customers. So what if, hypothetically, say for example, the White House puts a benefit or subsidy on electric vehicles produced in the United States? They have to be X number percentage produced in the United States. Therefore, if you are a manufacturer that's got an integrated supply chain and a certain percentage in Canada, a certain percentage in the United States, and a certain percentage in Mexico, it's going to disrupt that, and you're going to put your electric production in the United States because that's where the subsidies, or that's where the punitive elements are. So when we're talking about trade, there's a lot of things going on, but they're actually better integrated than we think. Most of our rules come from our goods trade rules, which are, go back 70, 80, 100 years. And they're the basis for how we do business, either accelerate or decelerate with various regulatory measures. We also have services trade. So for example, I am exporting a service to Canada, to Montreal, when I get on a plane from Atlanta and go teach a class at McGill University every spring. So that's a services export. But lots of things can hold that up as well, including, is that plane actually going to work? Is there a flight I can catch? Are the borders open? Can I pass the test that I need to pass to prove that I am a healthy person who's not a security risk? And then what are the labor market issues with me performing a service in that country? And as we're all suffering from labor market shortages and bottlenecks, why on earth are there so many impediments between movement of workers between the United States and Canada when we are not a bit of threat to each other? So that's something to think about. But those same rules and principles that we're talking about for goods and services trade also apply to trade in ideas, trade in technology. First, labor market issues, a huge issue. So what I just said about being able to move our workers applies doubly for the tech sector. And there's so many great synergies between Georgia and Canada in financial services, in AI. Oh my goodness, why are we not really collaborating better and trying to remove the regulatory barriers between us? And then the area of regulation, regulating things like digital privacy, security, protection. These are all emerging issues, but frankly, we've been ignoring them or not paying them the attention we should have for the past 10 or 15 years. Now they're coming up and biting us in the nose. And we have to find ways to both use the best available technologies and innovations, but also, again, why are we not regulating or aligning our regulations to be more similar than they are different? Why is the United States, Canada, European Union developing different standards for privacy, for data protection, for movement of data, when our companies are doing business together, when our people are moving relatively seamlessly from one place to another? So developing distinct, special, nationally protectionist regulations in the IT and tech sector, I think, is to our detriment. We need to be working together to figure out regulations and systems that we can all agree to.
Perfect. I have a lot I can like riff on there, but I want to open up to questions because we literally have 3 minutes here.
Sorry.
No, it's not y'all's fault. We were starting a little late and got some technical issues going on. But if anybody in the audience has questions for either our in-person panelists, Benoit's still around, and Jean-Francois is hanging out. Good, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Anybody got any questions? Got one? I'll repeat it.
No one
Make it quick.
about the communication. The different countries. So America and Canada speaks mostly English when it comes to the Quebec. How do you overcome on that?
Want me to start in English? So how do we overcome the language issues? When there is goodwill and intent and affection, we just manage to do it. I am, to my detriment, an Anglophone from Calgary, Alberta, which means I learned some French, but it wasn't the right French. And so I'm pretty terrible in French, but my French friends and colleagues help me along, just as we do in the United States with Mexico, with Mexican, but I mean, not only with those other. There's how many languages being spoken by the business community in Atlanta alone. You just figure out how to make it work with goodwill and affection.
I'll say that's sufficient for that one. Go ahead, Charles.
Is the province of Quebec exporting electricity to the United States?
That's how that happens, David.
Is the province of Quebec
Indeed, we are.
We
export quite a bit to New York and New England, New York in particular. But we have run into some headwinds with the approval of some of our cross-border transmission to New England. It appears there's some vested interests in the gas industry in New England that aren't too excited to see Quebec's energy coming into their marketing community. I won't comment more than that, but just, there's more than enough energy to go around. We're happy to share, and I think it makes us all cleaner, more efficient, and more competitive as a region.
I've been interested to learn that there's this whole history of the aluminum sector and U.S. Quebec collaboration on hydropower. Go ahead, back here.
So I have a question for Laura with respect to trade policy. For all of the things that you said you'd like to see happen, there's in many cases, and perhaps every case, a countervailing reason why it won't happen. So I'd like to ask whether you're optimistic if any of the things that you suggested might happen with respect to trade policy on the border might actually happen.
So either you repeat it or I'll repeat it.
Am I optimistic about the future of market opening between the U.S. and Canada with our trade agreements? That's a great question, sir. We are on the cusp. You know, the COVID big interruption is either driving us into a more insular position, or it is going to help us break down some of the barriers that we had in the past and engage more and better, at least with our regional friends. I hope that the political minds and the lawyers, I apologize to the lawyers, but lawyers really, you know, they make a lot of money from barriers. I'm sorry, madam. I hope that the business voice can become louder and more dominant in our negotiations going ahead. We haven't heard from business sufficiently in the past, and honestly, it's because in many places, I won't mention any names, but if you were a business that took a stand against prevailing government policy, you would find yourself on the bad end of a bad tweet. And nobody wants to see that happen. So we have had a very quiet business community for the last 10 years. But trade is ultimately about making things easier and better for businesses and consumers. It's not about keeping lawyers or politicians in business.
Oh, we got time for one more, maybe? One last one, or are we going into there? Okay, Zach.
You mentioned the labor shortage a few times. Is there anything specific that Canadian companies that have operations here in Georgia are doing differently from domestic companies to try to get those talented employees in the door?
Yeah, Quebec's got its own immigration policy.
Well, I don't think we have any secret solution in Georgia. I think one of the challenges the U.S. is facing is there hasn't been immigration reform. Looking from the outside in, not providing advice, let me stress that, but there hasn't been any major immigration reform in the U.S. in quite some time, and so the U.S. is essentially closed for the most part to immigration for professionals. And let's look at labor as another supply chain, as a talent chain, supply chain, and so that's making things worse. In Quebec and in Canada, we're generally open to immigration. For people in the tech space, we can get work permits in as little as 2 weeks. Quebec does have its own immigration program. I think James wants to say something. No, it's not. Oh, okay. But yeah, I think that's part of the secret. It doesn't make sense to set these, as Laura was saying, it just doesn't make sense to set barriers. All of Canada's population is less than the population of California. I don't think we're a threat to the United States. I think we have a lot of our own innate talent, and we'd like to be able to get the best and the brightest from anywhere in the world and welcome them to Canada because they make a positive contribution to our economy and to our society.
And I would just add very quickly, unless it has disappeared in the last week, there is something called the NAFTA or TN visa, which is a little benefit that exists particularly between our two countries, but also Mexico, where you can move skilled individuals from one country to the next without too much difficulty, as long as you've got a good lawyer, but that visa is adjudicated at the airport and doesn't take too long.
James, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, actually just following up to.
Shall I bring you the magic box?
Just following up to what Laura said on the, and further to your question, the big miss on the modernization of NAFTA, USMCA, was actually on the immigration element. I mean, they really just did not address it, and they defaulted to the old NAFTA limited mobility of labor. So as trade agreements modernize and let's say the next version of the USMCA or NAFTA 3.0, it really has to address that immigration element and the mobility of talent. Much of what is incorporated into the visa that Laura mentioned it predates NAFTA. And many of the sectors that we want to move people around in and have that freedom of movement, the movement of talent, didn't even exist at that time. So it makes it very difficult to incorporate them into an old agreement. So this is something that business has to lobby for as we produce and as we go forward in modernization of our trade agreements.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to close this out here, and I'll turn it over to Dana. I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.